Hi everyone, Nubkeks here. Welcome to another episode of Metakeks, the show where we discuss some of the bigger issues about Heroes of the Storm and take a broader look at the game. Once again, this one's actually been inspired by Srey, in particular one of the posts he made on can't think today on Reddit, on the Heroes of the Storm subreddit. But yeah, I think one of the first episodes of this, one of the first ones was on one of his videos where he's getting a lot of hate. But anyway, this one is called The Definitive Guide to Why You Probably Shouldn't Split Push as Azmodan and Why Hotslogs Stats Can Be Misleading. And it's really long. It's really long. I've read most of it. What we're going to do is go through this. I'll put the link in the video description if you want to go check it out and read this before you go through it. Because I'm not going to cover everything. I'm just going to address some of the main points because I think it's really interesting for kind of the community at large. Which yeah, like I'll try to explain it as much as possible, so you shouldn't be too lost if you just want to watch the video. But obviously, you'll get the best experience if you read the whole thing first. But anyway, let's dive into this. And yeah, it's kind of funny. He calls out the content creators. Feels bad, man. Feels bad. Anyway, he's saying it's long overdue. Bum. He was originally going to call it the definitive guide to why you probably shouldn't solo heal as Lily, and why Hotslog stats can be misleading. But yeah, kind of one of the points is being careful about using Hotslogs, which I talk about a good bit. In fact, let's open up Hotslogs, have it there. It can be misleading and it can lead you to draw untrue conclusions about the game and the heroes in it. So he's talking as well about his tier list, and this is something I get as well because I've got a tier list too. I've started doing. The idea that his tier list is solely his own opinion, and what you're trying to do in the tier list is kind of rank heroes in order of how they're going to be most impactful and in what sense they're going to be most impactful. I actually thought it was interesting that a lot of the ways that I do my tier list were kind of I kind of already had addressed some of the concerns that he raises here. It's quite interesting. But yeah, it's like one of the big things with the tier list is that, well, you know, you're trying to provide a resource for a wide array of players. Whereas one of the things I say, and I think this is important and ties into this, and it's one of the things I was mentioning there, is that at the start of every tier list I do, I say this is like a tier list for Grandmaster and Master players, a little bit less for Diamond, good bit less for Platinum, lots less for Gold, barely Silver at all, and nothing for Bronze, basically. That's how I start off every tier list, because that's incredibly important. There are different metas in the game, and heroes that are strong in Masters are not going to be strong in Bronze, and heroes that are strong in Bronze are not going to be strong in Masters. For example, he's talking about getting, you know, kind of being a target of constant criticism. I mean, sometimes I get that myself from the tier lists. You get people saying like, well, I kick ass on Gazlo, and I go, well, okay, I don't know who you are though. You know, it's like, are you the number one Grandmaster? Being like, dude, you're wrong. I kick ass on Gazlo. Are you like the last person in Bronze 5 going, well, you know, I kick ass on Gazlo, and you kind of look and go, oh, by kicking ass on Gazlo, he doesn't mean that he wins a lot. It just means that he sometimes doesn't lose. It's like it's funny. So there's another thing there into addressing your target audience and stuff like that, and like a comment like that, well, I kick ass on Gazlo, you know, it's not actually addressing me well as a target audience, given that I've said this is a tier list for Master level play, because, you know, I'm just kind of left to assume or guess that you might be, but I don't actually know whether that person is or is not. And then, of course, you know, we've got the issue as well of like personal experience, and that's not what I'm trying to do in the tier list. I think he says it here in this one as well. The tier list is not supposed to be, in fact, let me open that up as well, just in case you guys haven't seen that. But the tier list is supposed to be an impersonal reflection of how heroes perform, or, well, at least broadly impersonal. But for example, like, I don't rate heroes, and he does the same thing. You don't rate heroes highly on the tier list if I do really well on those heroes, and then heroes that I perform poorly on I rank lowly. I don't do that. What we try to do is to rank them based on your typical player, on how they typically perform, or at the same time as well, then you've got the tricky thing of how they ideally perform. So to give you one example, which will come up again during this, example in the last, hey, there you go, it's open up straight away for, but I have Alarak as like the second best assassin in the game at the moment. And I went into like a pretty big discussion in my tier list video, and that's one of the advantages I have over Srey, is that he just produces a written tier list, whereas I was able to do a video where I discuss this sort of stuff. But for example, with Alarak, I was saying, well, he's probably even the best hero in the game if you're really good at him, But if you're anything less, if you're even a little bit less than amazing at Alarak, he drops down way down. And that actually ties into Hotslogs. If we pop over here, and then this is something that's very important to do, is you can search by the different tiers. For example, if we hop over to bronze for a second, we see Samuro is the number 1 hero on bronze, whereas I've got him as like one of the worst ones. Whereas if we pop over to master, hey, where's Samuro? Where is he? What? I think he's in the middle, I think. Middle. Yeah, he's in the middle at the moment. So like 54%. So around the same spot as there. So there's actually a fair few heroes lower than him. He's actually doing a bit better than I expected. A little bit, maybe a third of the way up. So he's doing better than I expected at the moment, actually. So well played, Samuro. But we've got other heroes are up here. But Alarak is like down the bottom. Yeah, so Alarak is down the bottom. He actually has like a negative win percentage at master level, which is really bad. But yeah, that ties into what I was saying here. And we'll tie into this thing as well. It's like about their skill stuff in there, right? So that's one example for me of how it's difficult to rate the tier list. We'll come back to that. He talks here about like Overwatch as well, that you want to give an insight, and I suppose that's one of the goals of my tier list, is like, why do I make a tier list and say that my tier list is for like Master, Grandmaster, and then less to all the tiers below, when realistically Master, Grandmaster is by far the smallest proportion of the player base. I think that we brought that up in one of our previous videos where we actually saw like the graphs showing the population distribution, and Master, Grandmaster is tiny. It's like the top 1% of the Hero League player base. So if that's the top 1%, then that's 99% of people that the tier list doesn't fully apply to. I think this was kind of like a good sort of explanation. It's like people haven't reached Masters or Grandmasters yet, but they're interested in the perspective of someone who's played it like at that level and gives an insight into how the game kind of is played ideally. And I suppose that's what the tier list is supposed to do. It's supposed to give an insight into, in sort of an ideal circumstances, in an ideal sort of situation, how do these heroes play, what's going to be the stuff to look for. And as well, because I do, it ties into my other videos as well, of course, with my tier list, is that when you guys kind of have an understanding of my tier list of how I see the game, then when I go into the drafts in the Hero League games, you then have a pretty good baseline for understanding why I pick certain things, or when I start feeling pessimistic about a game or optimistic about a game, and the sort of the matchups I'm looking for and stuff like that. When I go into describing the draft at the start of every game, that having the tier list provides quite a lot of information as to what's actually going on there. Not the full amount of information, but it gives a hopefully a very good starting point to understanding how the game's going to work, and then how the game's going to play out, and why I'm saying the things I'm saying in those videos. But yeah, for example, he's talking about in how, you know, he went to Overwatch and learned that at the moment it's on 2 DPS, 2 supports, and 2 tanks. It's like the standard way of playing Overwatch, and that's like a good thing to know. And that's I'm in a similar spot where I was kind of curious about Overwatch from watching it at BlizzCon, some of the stuff in BlizzCon, and I was like, this is so different from when I played when the game first released, because people have actually learned how to play the game. And I was like, okay, so this is how compositions work. I was kind of interested in it. I'm curious to actually go back to it and see, you know, how stuff is happening with Overwatch, and now that you have like actually like organized ways of playing, and people are much better at the strategy of it, because it's the strategy of this stuff that hooks me in. Like, I don't find any interest in, I'm not particularly like in Heroes of the Storm interested in the strategy, not particularly interested in like pressing buttons real fast. I'm not really interested in shooting stuff real good in Overwatch, but I love like the strategy and how teams move. That stuff gets me. But yeah, so he's saying, you know, frustrating to be the target of constant criticism. Hey, welcome to being a content creator. Fun stuff. But yeah, this was interesting. This is part of why I'm making this video. It says, I blame myself and the content producing community of Heroes of the Storm at large. Feels bad, man, being blamed for this shit. It feels bad. But yeah, it's like frustration, resentment, talk a bit. Oh yeah, so this is actually kind of important. So for Srey in particular, so different from how I do my tier list, is that he puts them up without much information for why the tier list is structured in a certain way. He'll do like a single line per hero, and then you just get the list of how the heroes are set up. So that invites a obviously more criticism and stuff like that, because you haven't explained the thought process. And oftentimes, I mean, like, you could get some value, I would say, out of just looking at the tier list I've got here, but you're going to get most of the value out of watching the video I do on the tier list and listening to the explanations and the thought process. That's actually, in my opinion, much more important, and that's why I do it as a video and not just a written thing that I link to in like my video descriptions, because I just think it's far more worthwhile. It also means there tend to be quite long videos, but if people want to get good at the game, I think that's what you need to put into it, and that's what I put into it. So I have that stuff up there because I think that's what is necessary. But anyway, yeah, this is kind of interesting. So, So yeah, well, the reason that he doesn't provide more information as to why, it's a lot of work, and it certainly is a lot of work. But yeah, like, he, at the same time, it's, you know, he and I think for both of our tier lists, we draw a lot on our own personal experiences of Hero League, and that informs a lot of how we judge things. It's not just, I don't just, like, I could just go over here, go, boom, all right, last 7 days, I search by Master League, and there we go, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, everything perfect, nicely laid out in the tier list. All I have to do is, you know, search by, like, okay, let's get sustained damage dealers, great. Rainer, for example, I've rated Rainer really lowly, but he's doing pretty well. Boom, and just put Rainer in. Number 1, great, fantastic. Lunar's number 2, Thrall's number 3, and just like split them up like that, and then do that for every single role, and everyone would be happy. But I don't do that, and he doesn't do that, and the reason why is that we're drawing on our own understanding of the game and the why behind what stuff happens. Now, he has the disadvantage that he doesn't explain the why in his thing, whereas I do, but at the same time, it's not going to be perfect. But yeah, that's worth bearing in mind, that that's sort of the stuff that's going on, that we don't just draw from this. And this is why I can saying, you know, you probably shouldn't read Hotslogs too much. It gives you a really good background, but it doesn't give you the full story. And that's why I make the tier list videos fundamentally, is because, like I said, the explanations I think are important to understand where these heroes fit, and why they are strong or weak or yada yada yada, or why I think so anyway. Why does he lay the blame, though, on content producers, myself included? And he says the average player knowledge in Heroes of the Storm is among the lowest of any MOBA, and there are very few good resources that actually teach game knowledge. And he compares it to League of Legends, right? And he's obviously an experienced League of Legends player. I used to play League of Legends like years ago as well. But he says that contrasting it with Heroes of the Storm, he's found that through coaching players one-on-one and his own experience, the average player doesn't understand the meta basics in Heroes of the Storm, true all the way up to mid-diamond, and sometimes there's even a lack of game knowledge in Masters and Grandmasters. I can confirm even amateur teams attempting to break into competitive don't fully understand the meta of each map. We're going to do a pop quiz now. Woohoo! Let's do a pop quiz and see how things go. So I couldn't answer all of them perfectly. We'll see how we do, though, and you guys can answer as well along with me, or even pause the video now before we go into the answers. But yeah, I think part of it, I think this is true. I think with like League of Legends, I mean, when I started, I played at the very start of the game when that first came out as well, and then eventually stopped. But like the way people play the game radically changed, I would say, over the first like 2-3 years. And from then on, it's been fairly stable. And there are certain changes, but basically in League of Legends, I think, does he mention it here? You've got your 3 lanes. They're very much split. They're very far apart, and it's all about farming in those lanes for the start. So yeah, you have like a solo top laner, you have a solo mid laner, you got someone in the jungle who kind of roams around between the lanes, then you've got support and like a ranged basic attack damage hero effectively in the bottom lane. And that's how it's structured because of how gold and experience and items in that game work, which are the alternative to talents. It's a huge difference between the two games, but there's a very set meta. Now, it does change a bit, and they had like lane swaps around and stuff like last season and stuff, but it's been fairly standard for many years. And one of the big things I think with League of Legends and with Dota is that they are single map games, and that's one of the big things when you come over to Heroes of the Storm, is that because we have, I think, 11 maps now, probably 12 soon, we've got a lot of maps. So that's a lot of different ways to play, a lot of different ways to set things up. And while you have some of the maps play similarly, then you also have got different maps that play very, very differently. And that it means that there's basically, 12 times as many metagames in order to learn. And I think it's not 12 times as hard, because there's still quite a lot of overlap, or there's a fair amount of overlap, but it's still much more difficult. And I think looking at those previous games, like in League of Legends, it took like 2 or 3 years. Heroes of the Storm has been out for about 2 years now, I think. I don't know, about 2 years. We've had 2 BlizzCons with the game released. Yeah, so about 2 years. And people are still really not that great on the meta for the different maps and stuff. And I'm going to talk about that because I've been asked to do stuff on that before, and I want to address that. But it does take time in order to develop the metas for those maps. If it took 2 years to work it out for a 1 map game, how long is it going to take to work it out for a 12, 11 map game as it is right now? It's going to take a while. Anyway, let's do a pop quiz. Number 1, what is the meta for each map? I.e., does the map have a solo lane? Which lane is solo? Is the solo lane? Should you rotate between lanes? How important is wave clear? You need a hero specific to the objective. You should be able to answer each of these questions for all the maps. Can we get the maps here? Let's do this. I think you can find maps here. Yeah, wins by map. Cool. Great. Alright, let's go. Brax's holdout, first of all. Alright, what are the questions? Okay, does the map have a solo lane? Brax's holdout, yes. I actually don't know which lane should be the solo lane, though. Probably top. But I don't know. Oh, which lane is solo? That's the next one. Should you rotate between the lanes? Not really. They tend to be fairly isolated on Brax's holdout, actually. It's kind of difficult to rotate between them, but you do obviously rotate a little bit to try to control the points when the points come up. But generally, it's like a fairly 1-4 split, I think. How important is wave clear? Yeah, very important on Brax's holdout. It helps you control the points more, and then you need it to deal with the Zerg waves as well. So you need a hero specific to the objective. You don't need one, but it definitely helps. I think that's true for every... I would actually say that's probably true for every map. Not necessarily that you need a hero specific to the objective, but definitely the hero strengths on every map are determined in a large part by the objectives. So, for example, someone like Chen or Rexar are quite good in Braxis because they're very strong solo heroes, are very good at holding a point for a long time. So they could hold off sometimes even like 1v2 for a little while. So that's kind of important. I mean, look at that. Rexar this is just, in general, he's played on Braxis the most. Yeah, makes sense, right? Makes sense. And yeah, okay, cool. Next map, let's go. Boom, Blackheart's Bay. Is there a solo lane? Yeah, well, Blackheart's Bay, there's a solo lane and then a double lane. So people are really bad at Blackheart's Bay, but I didn't know about it honestly before playing ranked as well. It's something that only comes out in ranked. I noticed that very much when I started playing ranked, was that Blackheart's Bay in particular was played quite differently. So generally speaking, you might have at the start of the game, you'll normally have one person in the bottom lane, so that'll be a solo lane at the start, and then you'll have 4 in the top 2 lanes. Then as the game goes on, you'll generally have hopefully just one person solo the top 2 lanes. They'll actually solo 2 lanes at once. Someone like Zool can do it really well. That's why he's unbelievably good at Blackheart's Bay. And then you can have like the rest of your team members roaming around doing the merc camps, invading, stealing, pressuring, pushing lanes where needed. Then you obviously want at least one person down the bottom lane at all times. You want one person doing the top 2 lanes if they can, and you want to draft someone that can, and then you want to be doing the merc camps and creating pressure, farming your coins, and creating presence on the map to get them turned in and prevent turn-ins. It's a really complicated map. People suck at it, and that's why I despise this map. It's my least favorite map. It's rubbish. What are the other questions here? Should you rotate between lanes? Yeah, so like I said, you're going to have one person dealing with the top 2, and then it's not necessarily rotating between lanes, but rotating between all the objectives and moving. It's very complicated. But yeah, that's awkward. How important is wave clear? Well, I mean, for the person doing the top 2 lanes, like Zool, is incredibly important. So that's why Zool, with his wave clear, is so strong. Apart from that, not overly much. Like, you typically don't push in on that map. Do you need a hero specific to the objective? Well, it definitely helps. You could, for example, Rexar is picked an awful lot there and does very well in general. Again, it's an overview. So this is something I'd actually be cautious of, and one of the main messages of this post by him, which I completely agree with, is that it's very hard to draw judgments about how heroes are played just in their general win percentage. Very hard. In fact, let's filter this by master and see how it changes, because I can talk about it more there. You can see things change significantly. In fact, Blackheart's Bay, Rexar's doing kind of shit, but that's only with 13 games. If we add in Diamond as well, maybe make that a bit more fair. Yeah, there you go. 87 games. He's only doing okay in Blackheart's Bay. Brax's holdout, he's still good. You can see he's doing much better on Battlefield of Eternity, which is a bit unusual. That's very unusual. Huh, weird. And Sky Temple, that one makes more sense to me. But yeah, there you go. You can see like the percentages and stuff flips around a lot. Whereas if we go for bronze in particular, suddenly it's all over the place. Blackheart's Bay, he's by far number one, which is, you know, so yeah, things change quite a lot. I'll put it back to master. I was kind of say we could search for like a few weeks at once, which would give us a better overview, but you can't seem to do it on this particular page. Oh well, we'll just stick with it here. No, we won't. There are too few games. It's too small a sample size. We'll just go back to the general thing. That would be very... I would filter it down to be more helpful, but that's such a small sample size. It's just misleading. Oh, well. What was I saying? Oh, wait. We're on Blackheart's Bay. I don't remember what I was saying about Blackheart's Bay. Heroes specific to the objective. Oh, I remember now. Yeah. So you can have heroes that are good at clearing merc camps. So, like, Rexar is pretty good. Sonya is pretty good. Illidan. So those heroes tend to get a bit of play. Zul is just stupid good on that map. You can have like Leoric or Johanna who kind of do a similar job but worse in the top two lanes. Yeah, there you go. Kind of interesting. I think that's all the questions. Yep. Okay, next one. This quiz is going to take a long time. Sky Temple. Sky Temple. That's an interesting map. Does the map have a solo lane? Yeah, like the... I don't know. That actually changes a lot, and I don't know what this one is. Sometimes I would say usually the bottom lane would be the solo lane at the start because you've got the top two temples, and then you'd have the solo lane who will come up. But I don't really know. Sometimes the top lane is solo. Yeah, sometimes you can have like a 1-3-1 with them people rotating, but that's kind of weird. Yeah, which lane is solo? I'm actually not sure. There you go. I don't know. I don't really know for Sky Temple. I don't really know. It tends to be to change up a little bit. Should you rotate between the lanes? Yeah, I think so. That's again, I don't know if this is the right way to play, but this is how I would generally look at Sky Temple, is you'd have one person in each lane, and then you have kind of two people a bit more free to rotate around and make things happen. I don't know if that's right though, but that's generally how I would look at it. How important is wave clear? I'd say moderately important, not super important. I think it's helpful, but it's not the most important map to have wave clear on. It's okay. It's like, I think it's important to have people that can actually do the shrines decently, or the temples, excuse me, decently, but having amazing wave clear isn't super important. Then again, you could draft a pretty powerful wave clear team with like a Sylvanas or something like that and do like kind of pushes to get structural damage, and that can be really strong, so I don't know. Do you need a hero specific to the objective? Again, not particularly specific, but you can see in general Rexar does pretty well because Rexar is going to be pretty good at soloing it or whatever. But yeah, you want heroes that are pretty decent at doing the temples by themselves, or at least it definitely helps if you can put someone and they can solo it safely. It opens up a lot of options for moving around the map. Next up then, Cursed Hollow. Let's see if we know this one a bit better. Does the map have a solo lane in Cursed Hollow? Yeah, the top lane is typically the solo lane. Which lane? Yeah, top lane. Should you rotate between lanes? Again, yeah, I think on nearly every map you're going to rotate a little bit, except for the 2-lane map, so maybe on Haunted Mines when it comes back, but that's changed, I don't know. But Braxis and Battlefield are probably the ones you rotate least on. I'm pretty sure you're going to rotate, or you ought to be rotating and switching around quite a bit in the other ones if you're playing well. Rotate between lanes. Now, with Cursed Hollow, obviously they're very big lanes, so you're not going to rotate very much, but there still will be a certain degree of rotations. Even insofar as you need to answer the enemy team's rotations, or just create pressure and draw them away, that sort of stuff. So there will be a little bit. It won't be huge though. It's not a very rotate. I think it's a badly phrased question actually. Should you rotate between lanes? I think yeah. I don't see any map, even Battlefield, where it's like you never want to rotate. You're still going to rotate between lanes a little bit, or certainly between objectives. Like you never just sit in your lanes and never leave them. I think it'd be more like how important are rotations on the map. On Cursed Hollow, because they're so spaced out, their rotations aren't as anywhere near as impactful as they are in something like, Dragonshire or Tomb of the Spider Queen. But yeah, you have a little bit, but it's not a huge deal. How important is wave clear? Decently important, but again, it's not the most important map for it. It's just certainly decently important. It can help to defend, during a curse. It can help a little bit to push during a curse. Excuse me, I had dinner before this video, so I'm all burpy. Wave clear, it's okay. Garden of Terror then. Ooh, okay. Oh wait, hang on. Do you need a hero specific to the objective for Cursed Hollow? Again, heroes that can poke well, even heroes that can get a bit of vision and stuff like that are very strong here. Also, global heroes are very strong because you can like split. Same on. Oops, I should have said as well. Same on all these maps actually. Global heroes are really strong because you can split push and then just suddenly arrive at the objective. That's actually quite a large deal on all 4 of these so far. We're neglected to say that, my bad. But yeah, heroes that can poke. Like a Li Ming is pretty good on Cursed Hollow, right? Because she can like throw her stuff in and it really delays the turn in. It can be a real pain. Garden of Terror then, next up. Does the map have a solo lane? I don't know. Maybe top lane, but I don't really know actually. Don't know that one either. Should you rotate between lanes? I would say yes, probably a little bit. Again, it's a pretty big map. How important is wave clear? I would say on Garden of Terror, it's actually a bit more important than some of these other ones. Wave clear is going to be a bit more important in terms of helping you defend, in terms of helping you push as well. And yeah, it also can help you clear out the waves quickly and then get on to doing like the objective. You see, this is a weird map because the objective takes so long. Yet it's also like this big 3-lane map where pushing is also important. It's kind of an unusual one as well. Importance wave clear. Do you need a hero specific to the objective? So, well, I mean, like, Lost Vikings are stupidly good on this map because you can have one inside the Garden Tower. Tychus is very good because he can shred the tower. And then it's kind of also important that you have heroes that can kind of safely deal with it. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, I don't know this one very well. Don't know that one very well. Next up is Warhead Junction. Does the map have a solo lane? This one's new, so I also don't really know. I would say probably like top lane is probably the solo lane, or maybe bottom lane. Off the top of my head, I can't picture the map and how far apart they are. I know there's the vision point up near top lane, which would help a little bit protect you from rotations up there, but I don't actually know. So I don't really know. Should you rotate between the lanes? Again, it's huge. So as always, you should do a little bit of rotating, but it's a really big map, so it's difficult to do that. And you're going to be rotating a lot to deal with where the nukes spawn. And again, off the top of my head, I don't know where the nukes spawn. How important, and I'm sure there is set things, but it's just as new, so I haven't learned it, but that's a good point. I don't know for this map. How important is wave clear? I say decently important, but again, not particularly. Do you need heroes specific to the objective? Again, heroes that can poke and heroes that are pretty strong solo or in small skirmishes are going to be good because you have multiple nukes spawning at the same time. Global heroes, especially, once again, are very good. Global heroes not as good on Garden of Terror. Still okay, but not as good. Apart from Vikings, that sort of thing. Abathur can be decent at soaking as well. But I say like global heroes would stand out as being particularly strong on Warhead Junction for getting to the nukes quickly and stuff like that. Interesting. And yeah, then much like Cursed Hollow, heroes that can poke and delay are pretty useful as well. Infernal Shrines. Does the map have a solo lane? Oh shit, I don't know. I'm really bad at this. This is embarrassing. Does it have a solo lane? Probably top, but I don't know. Top or bottom? I don't know. There's a lot more rotations on this one, I feel. Don't know. Should rotate between lanes? Yeah, fair amount, actually, because it's a bit smaller. So you'd be rotating more so, I feel, on this one. And also there's several merc camps on the bottom and mid that tend to need to be dealt with. So yeah, there's a bit more rotating here, I feel. It's also very much focused on the objective. How important is wave clear? I would say wave clear is actually quite important on this one because the wave clear also affects your ability to clear the shrines. Do you need hero specific to the objective? Again, that's also like badly phrased. Pretty more like how important is it to pick heroes for the objective? I think it's actually very important on Infernal Shrines that you have. For example, you could have something like Kerrigan who can solo the shrine like effortlessly, very quickly and very safely. She can just solo the shrine, and that's a pretty big deal. Now, of course, that doesn't always play out as working in the games, and you have more people on the shrines, or it can be a bit of a bloodbath because it's Hero League. But yeah, shrine clear is incredibly important, which also ties into having good wave clear as well. I don't know how you could have really bad shrine clear and have terrible wave clear, so they kind of overlap. And yeah, objective, pretty much the same point. And yeah, one of the interesting things about, he hasn't covered in the quiz here, but one of the interesting things about Infernal Shrines is that it's often better, and people don't do this, but it's often better to soak the lanes while also doing the objective, because the early ones are particularly weak, so you don't necessarily want to give up soak, or like for example, with the first Punisher, you don't necessarily want to push its 5 people. You're probably better off sending people to the other lanes to soak them, and because the experience is going to be more worthwhile than actually pushing in. Well, there you go. Next we got Dragonshire. Map have a solo lane. Yeah, probably top. I think bottom could also solo, but then bottom is, I think top is more isolated on Dragonshire, and it also doesn't matter as much if it gets pushed in. because it's really difficult to win the game through top lane because of those bridges. And bottom lane has got the siege camps, so you probably want top lane. Yeah, top lane would be the solo lane. There you go. Should you rotate? I don't know it off the top of my head though. Should you rotate between the lanes? Yeah, you're gonna rotate a lot in Dragonshire. It's probably one of the most rotation heavy maps to control, like to create pressure, to control the shrine things, altars. I don't know what they're called, but yeah, you're gonna have a lot of rotations. Wave clear. I'd actually say wave clear is very important on this map, just to maintain vision and maintain map presence, which really helps controlling, because you need to have pretty good control of all 3 lanes in order to capture the dragon. So you could eventually just win a team fight and get one, but you can also win one just by rotating intelligently, having good map control with and vision with good wave clear and stuff like that. So yeah, Dragonshire is also, in my opinion, one of the most complicated maps. Do you need a hero specific to the objective? No, but certainly global heroes are very strong. Just being able to arrive in any one of the things. You know, you can have a hero like Chen or something. You can hold solo for a long time, or Rexar. They're also pretty good, I would say. Rexar's win percentage in general not that great, but yeah, I would think those heroes, sort of heroes, might have a bit of a place, but I don't think it's too important. I would say more globals to help with the rotations, and just it's more to do with the strategy than specific heroes. There you go. And next up, Tomb of Spider Queen. Okay, map of a solo lane. Usually bottom lane is the solo lane there. Should you rotate between lanes? Yes, you're going to rotate a lot because it's tiny. How important is wave clear? Extremely important. It's probably, yeah, I'd say that's the most important wave clear map. It's very important to have very good wave clear there. Do you need a hero specific to the objective? No, but you're going to want just to have very good rotations, very good wave clear, just kind of creating, again, establishing vision throughout the game. Being able then, through the vision and through being able to push the lanes in, being able to kind of collect gems a bit more safely, being able to keep the enemy team under pressure and a bit contained and get turn-ins and stuff like that. Yeah, Tomb of the Spider Queen. There you go. What's next? Towers of Doom. This is a long question. 1. Towers of Doom. Does the map have a solo lane? This answers actually the frickin' all those questions people are asking on how to play maps. This kind of answers it a little bit. Towers of Doom. Does it have a solo lane? That's kind of a weird one as well. Like top lane usually is the solo lane, but sometimes you'll have like one person down bottom lane as well. But yeah, normally top lane, again, there, because you've got the multiple merc camps that go through the bottom lane, whereas you only have the one in the top lane, and it's really difficult to take, so it's kind of just more, not much happens there. So top lane usually. Should you rotate between lanes? I would say yeah, fair amount. And I think the sappers and using the sappers well is also pretty important, so that plays a pretty big role in how the map plays. What's the other question? Should rotate? How important is wave clear? Decently important. Wave clear can be okay. Certainly if you're able to like push down towers, that's a huge part. You can also use the sappers to assist you and stuff like that. I'd say wave clear is moderately important. But then also going over to the objective, it also important to have like global heroes, and again, heroes with poke that can delay or stall things out, and be pretty good at team fighting for Towers of Doom as well. I haven't actually, mentioned team fighting that much, which is pretty bad. I'm a noob. I don't know. We've already covered enough information. Let's not go through all that. We'll just answer Srey's questions. Then final map is Battlefield of Eternity. Ooh, Rexar. Wow, Rexar's really bad at that, but then in Masters is his best one, isn't it? No, sorry, I'm wrong. No, never mind. Was it Master? I feel like I saw that somewhere. Yeah, if Masters and Diamond. Okay, so wait. Diamond? Nah. Someone in Diamond is really good at Battlefield of Eternity with Rexar, but people in general suck at it. Ha! Small sample sizes. Battlefield. Does the map have a solo lane? Yeah, probably top lane. Which lane is the solo? I think you could have solo either way. I don't see any particular reason why one would be solo and one wouldn't be, but normally top lane is the solo, I think. Should you rotate between the lanes? Not really. It tends to be pretty 1-4 split until like objectives come up. How important is wave clear? Not really. Do you need hero specific to objectives? I would say yes. I think this map is Battlefield of Eternity is quite dependent on the objectives. I think it's kind of like Infernal Shrines. They're pretty objective based maps. But yeah, you're going to want heroes that can burn the Immortal pretty quickly, or at least that's the easiest way to play. There you go. So, that is that answered. Hey, woo, won! This is a long-ass video, isn't it? 34 minutes, great, cool. Fuck it, it'll be a podcast. It's going to be like an hour long. So, brace yourselves. Alright, question number 2. Using Tomb of the Spider Queen as an example, how should you split your heroes for the first turn in? Ooh. How much should you expect to gain in terms of enemy structures destroyed? What about a late game turn in? You should have expectations for the completion of the objective of the map. Yeah, so I had like. This is like the point where I was kind of like, this is getting a bit more. You can't really answer that, or at least I wouldn't directly answer that. And I thought this kind of ties in a bit to Srey has experience as a pro player, as opposed to the more chaotic nature of Hero League. For example, for me, how should you split your heroes for like I don't actually go into the map, like I don't know, I don't have like a set of rules for how to split up uh on a lot of the maps. Really, I just kind of do it intuitively, or I know it intuitively. I feel like for myself I've got a very very good sense of the game and the strategy and the movements and the pressure. I think I'm really good at that, and I use that a lot. And for example, I'll like be judging in the game very much so. I'll be like, okay, how good are actual players? Because there's a huge variety, even in like masters, grandmasters, of how good people actually are on the particular heroes, or just the skill distribution amongst your team. So even if you have the exact same team comp in 2 games, you could play it completely differently just because your players are playing different. And then it also depends as well on your comp compared to the enemy's team comp, just your comp in of itself in the same way, how it fits with the map. So I think I found this stuff was really difficult to answer. I was like, there's so much stuff that goes into it, so I don't know. So for example, how should you split your heroes for the first turn in? I wouldn't feel like myself that there would be any particular rules. I would kind of, for this, I would be kind of judging it off of like how are the waves pushed, what kind of vision do we have, how much can they push in, how are our players doing, like do we have a Leoric who's fucking shit and he can't play, so now I've got to alter how I play the game to take advantage of that. I mean, did their Rhaegar push a bit too far in mid lane, took a really bad trade, and now we can create a lot of pressure. For me, I don't have like strict rules like this. I don't know. Maybe that's important. I know people like that. I tend to react quite negatively against that though. For example, I people love on Reddit as well. They have their fucking checklist of like, important things to do. Be like push core, soak experience a thing. Do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they have this checklist of things you could do. It's like I don't play like that at all. You know what I mean? I play a much more intuitive and more natural understanding of how the game works. I feel like if you're operating off like this checklist of things to do, you'll probably play pretty well, but you'll never be the best because the game is much more organic than that. There's so many factors, just purely from the fact that you've got 10 different people in every single game. So it's going to be different. Now, that's why I mentioned that Srey would have a different perspective on this, certainly from pro play, because in pro play, you are playing with your team who are the same 5 people in every single game. They all play on usually a fairly dedicated role, and you play with them hours every day. So you do start to develop much more stricter strategies. And then also everyone is at a particular, generally speaking, everyone's going to be at a pretty high standard. So it becomes much more about the strategies, and things become much more fixed. In particular, pro play, I think in the chaos of Hero League, a lot of that stuff breaks down. So I don't know. So how should you split your heroes for the first turn in? I don't know. Like, you're generally going to have one person at least in each lane, and you're going to have a couple of people roaming around. Sometimes you'll leave the lanes to like gank or something like that. And based off of like how the teams are playing, it goes quite differently in my opinion. That's what I think about that. How much should you expect to gain in terms of enemy structures destroyed? Again, it really depends what time you get the turn in. I would say probably on Tomb of the Spider Queen. I'd say probably with the first web weavers, you're just looking to take out the front walls for a few of them, but you're not actually going to take a fort. That's why I think as you get like if you get 2 web weaver turn-ins, I think that's why it's so powerful, because you get the first turn in, push all the lanes and maybe take out the front walls. Then the second turn in, with the lanes pushed, we'll start pressuring the forts, and you can maybe get a fort, maybe 2, and then at that point the map is super snowballed because you've got a big XP advantage, probably a talent tier advantage, almost definitely a talent tier advantage. And they're also down structurally, which means their map control. That's something people never talk about, or very, very, very rarely talk about in Heroes of the Storm compared to when I played League of Legends. It was all about like vision control, map control. You get that almost never gets talked about in this game. That's actually something I would add on. I don't think he talks about it here, but I put that in very much so. That is something that's completely missing as a concept of something that's important. But for example, in Tomb of the Spider Queen, if you still have your 3 forts, you still have the 3 fort walls. The enemy team is just like missing all of theirs. They got like maybe a fort and half health left in one lane, and you're up a talent here. It's like, how do they ever control it's so difficult for them to control the turn-ins. It's so difficult for them to move up the lanes and to create constant vision, whereas you have your half of the map is completely, for the most part, lit up. It's very easy for you to retreat to somewhere safe, to tap a well, to come back again, whereas they've got so far to run away. It becomes very difficult to control the map, and that's why you often hear like 2 web weaver turn-ins in a row is so important. And that's why I think, because it gets you a big lead, but more importantly, it destroys structures, which opens up the map, and then it's a very pressure-dependent map to get the turn-ins, and it becomes much more difficult. What about late game turn-in? Again, what's late game precisely? That's a rather vague term. I mean, you could say, well, with a late game turn-in, you're probably looking to take a keep, but I don't know. You could also just be looking to take out a few keep walls and just get to level 20 first and take a boss in the game. I don't know. Again, it's pretty vague. Sort of expectations for the completion of the objective each map, what to do after. So I always feel that the web weavers actually in particular are relatively weak, and it can be it really depends again on like what sort of compositions both teams have. But sometimes you can have it, and this is why I'm not a huge fan of this map, is if people have drafted bad team comps, this map can go on for fucking ages because no one can get a turn in, or they get a turn and they don't do anything with it, or they turn in at a shit time and it doesn't do anything, and it can be a really boring stall outy kind of map. There's other maps like Battlefield. Battlefield ends really quickly, whether you wanted to or not, because the Immortal just destroys shit. So, yeah, there you go. Alright, question number 3, I think. Yeah, question number 3. When should you take out mercenary camps? Ooh, let's use Sky Temple as our example. Ah, okay. Interesting. This is actually quite important, and people are, depending on maps, are pretty bad at it. So Sky Temple, I would say you have the first temple phase, then before the second temple phase, I'd say maybe halfway between the two, you want to grab like your bottom siege camp. You want to try push it in. You want to try take out their walls and try to take out their healing fountain down the bottom lane, because you've got the top 2 temples first, then you've got the bottom temple. Will come up afterwards. If you're able to use your siege camp down the bottom, and this is like a new thing that's developed in the meta as well. It wasn't used before really, but if you take that siege camp and you're able to destroy the walls and the healing fountain, again, what I was talking about, it creates so much map control and pressure because they've got less vision. They have to retreat further back to get to safety. They don't have a wall to hide behind. Then if they're missing their well as well, they can't run back and tap it and then re-engage over the bottom temple. So if one team has their front wall and their well for the bottom temple phase, they've got a really big advantage over a team that doesn't have it, because they've got somewhere safe to retreat to, they've got a well that they can tap and get back into the fight quickly, and then if you control that bottom temple, it's going to snowball stuff. And also, it's going to get more value if you destroy the bottom walls as well. It's going to start doing fort damage, which is great. Then the other thing you want to do is you want to take the bruiser camp before that temple phase starts, so that you've got a bruiser camp pushing up top when the temple is active, which means that they have to make a choice. They either have to deal with the bruiser camp, which means they've got less heroes at the bottom temple, which will be punished, or ought to be punished. Again, even at Masters level, not necessarily the case, which is sad, but in theory it should be. And then if they send everyone to the temple and fight over the temple, the bruiser camp is going to do a ton of structural damage up top, and this be fantastic. That's why I like a hero like Falstad is really good on Sky Temple, because Falstad can defend up top lane, and then when shit goes down, he can just fly down bottom lane. Or Dahaka, someone like that can just like wave clear really well up top, deal with that bruiser camp push, and then get down. I think after that, it becomes much less important. At least I wouldn't be aware of any specific things after that point in the game. I think merc camps, I would say it pretty much on all the maps actually. Right, the first few merc camps are the most important, and then it gets less important because they get weaker, and then, like I said, the chaos, like I was talking about here, the chaos and the particulars of each game start to take over a bit more. Teams start to snowball, so on, things like that. The first ones are pretty important. For example, let me think, what other maps? So Garden of Terror, I think actually using the merc camps in Garden of Terror is something people are terrible at. But then I'm also not that good at Garden of Terror myself, so I don't want to speak too much. But yeah, okay, let's talk about Battlefield of Eternity, right? Using the Bruiser camps on Battlefield of Eternity, that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal. So on Battlefield of Eternity, you want to take your Bruiser camp before the just before the Immortal phase starts. So once again, they have to either go deal with the Bruiser camp or deal with the Immortal. When they have to deal with the Bruiser camp, it slows them down in the Immortal, and then you can maybe win the race. That's kind of the rough theory right there. Cursed Hollow, you take the siege camp as soon as it spawns, then you're going to have a siege camp pushing during the first tribute, which will, it's actually worth more than the first tribute. So that's kind of an interesting one. People are not super aware of that one yet. They're getting a bit more aware, but not super aware of it. Then I think on maps like Dragonshire or Tomb of the Spider Queen, where it's more about just general map pressure and how the teams move and stuff like that, I don't think there's as specific timings for merc camps. Because it's all about like just the pressure, and you're using merc camps to create pressure. There's not specific timings over an objective where you need to be there. Like Infernal Shrines, again, using the Bruiser camp again, right? Where there's maps where there is like a specific place in the map that you need to be for an extended period of time. Sky Temple, Infernal Shrines, Battlefield of Eternity. You know, you're fighting over a given objective. That's where I think the timings, Cursed Hollow as well, that's where timings become very important. Towers of Doom to a certain extent, but there's no bruisers, there's only the sappers. Timings become very important there. Whereas on maps which are more about just general pressure, then the timings specifically aren't really there. That's what I'd say. Well, it's an extremely standard Vala comp on Tomb of the Spider Queen. I think you can only answer this vaguely, because I would say something like double warrior. Could you double support? I would say for Tomb of the Spider Queen with Vala, I would quite like double warrior is pretty standard with Vala because she does a ton of damage, but she's very squishy and vulnerable. So yeah, double warrior is pretty good. Tassadar is really good in Tomb of the Spider Queen. I don't know if that's standard. I don't know. Maybe it is. Yeah, I would say like it's so difficult like to pick an actual, because like people pick away the heroes and there's bans and the enemy team picks stuff and then people can't necessarily play everything. So I don't know if this is looking for specific heroes. I would say in general probably like double warrior comp is pretty standard. You could also run double support with Tassadar being very strong. I actually quite like Tyrande on that map, which is, I don't think that's definitely not standard though. That's like a personal thing. At least it's not standard at the moment. I just don't think so. But yeah, I'd say you're looking like double warrior or like double support with Tassadar. That's like the vaguest thing I could say that can be consistently filled out. I don't know. Hopefully that's a good answer. Number 5, on Battlefield of Eternity, Team 1's comp is Muradin, ETC, Malfurion, Greymane, and Falstad. Team 2's comp is Arthas, Tyrande, Vala, Li Ming, and Alarak. Watch what each team do during the Immortal phase. Both comps are pretty awful. Okay, so we got number 1, we got Muradin, ETC, Malfurion, Greymane, Falstad. Number 2, Arthas, Tyrande, Vala, Li Ming, and Alarak. That's pretty easy. Hopefully that one's pretty easy for you guys. But like Team 2 is gonna wreck the Immortal. It's like Tyrande, with her vulnerability, can almost single-handedly make a team switch from losing the Immortal to winning. Then they've also got Vala, who's amazing at killing the Immortal. Arthas isn't bad for a warrior. Li Ming is really good at it too. Well, depends on how she specs, but she's pretty damn good because it's a big stationary thing she can hit everything on, hopefully, unless she's really shit. Alarak is crap at it, and that's probably why. Yeah, I mean, they've got solo healer Tyrande, solo warrior Arthas, neither of which are particularly good. Vala Li Ming is good. Alarak is good, but Alarak, you can see, he doesn't fit inherently into the... Yeah, the team comp doesn't really have a particular identity. In a sense, you've got somewhat of a pick comp with like a Tyrande and Alarak, but yeah, it's really awkward. But like then they've got, in a sense, like a pretty good racing composition. Like these 3 heroes in particular, very strong racing composition, but then Alarak is kind of crappy killing the Immortal. The enemy team, yeah, like if you look at Team 1, like Muradin, ETC, they've got really bad Immortal damage. Like sure, Greymane is really strong, but Greymane cannot compete with Tyrande, Vala, Li Ming, no way. And Falstad is not fantastic either. So they're pretty weak. ETC obviously gives the, you know, attack speed buff, and that's okay, but no. So yeah, basically Team 2 is going to try to race the Immortal. Team 1, what Team 1 needs to do is to try to kill someone, right? Because they've got solo warrior Arthas and solo healer Tyrande, so they've got like no burst healing, and they've got 3 very squishy heroes, whereas they've got a lot of lockdown with Muradin, ETC, Malfurion. I mean, like if they hit someone with 1 stun, they can like stun lock them from the Muradin stun, ETC stun, Malfurion roots. They've got a ton of lockdown, and then Greymane and Falstad, that's a lot of single target blow up, particularly when someone is rooted and Falstad can land a full hammer combo. So they basically want to try find one person and kill them. They can even kill Arthas, because Arthas is very weak to being bursted down, I would say, particularly with Tronda trying to keep him alive, and she can't. So I'd say that's probably the theory. I don't know, you might have Alarak kind of swanning around trying to scout shit out and keep him away. I don't know. It's I can see neither comp is particularly good, but yeah, this one's gonna look for picks, and this one's gonna look to just kill the Immortal. There you go. How did you do? Do you feel like some of these questions are unfair? You can't be expected to know the answers to all of them. At the end of the day, knowing the answer to these questions is integral to playing Heroes of the Storm competently. The lack of game knowledge by the majority of the community is the reason that so many professional players complain on stream, Reddit, or Twitter about the quality of Hero League. Yeah, there's also, I think, population density is a big thing, so you get quite large skill differentials in Hero League, because there's simply... It might just simply be the case they can't get like 5v5 like top grandmasters to play against each other. You'll get them mixed in with lower level players, and that can be annoying. And then also the fact that people can be stuck on heroes they're not necessarily good on, or they intentionally choose heroes that they shouldn't because they're dumb. Yeah, I have to say I did actually feel some of the questions were unfair, or I don't know, not unfair. I do think some of them could be phrased a little bit better, but who cares? It's a fucking massive post, so I don't blame him if it's not 100% perfect in every respect. I do agree though that like first, yeah, I mean looking at that, I was like looking at the maps, I was like, okay, I should probably know the solo lanes and stuff better for each of the maps. I think that is important. But at the same time, I do have to have a word of caution, not against like rules like that in general, but I think especially going into the games, depending on the sort of composition, like I do think it's very important that you would have a good composition for each map, and that you'd have a pretty good idea of how each map is played and stuff like that, and also to have pick good heroes and what the enemy team is picking, and to take away power picks and things like that. I think it's very important to control merc camps well, and yeah, I think this one, number 2, is kind of a little bit trickier. Even like splitting heroes for the first turn in, I feel on Tomb of the Spider Queen in particular, it's quite difficult to give a strict rule on that. And I do want to put that word of caution about strict rules on priorities that people really like, and I think are really misleading. It's like it's an okay way to give an insight into, roughly speaking, how you should play the game, but the game isn't. It's like it's not a checklist of things you should do. It's not that. Particularly as you get into the game, it's not that. It's never going to be that. And if you follow a strict checklist, you're going to fuck yourself up. Knowledge gap is massive between the top 1% and mid 50%. Yes. Even the difference between top 10% and 1% is noticeable. Yes. As the top 1%, top 1.1%. Yes, I agree. Yep, very much. So this is like Masters, and this is like Grandmasters. I think there's a huge knowledge gap between all of these, for sure. Subtle nuances will always be more apparent to high-level players. Broad and generic game knowledge shouldn't be. Mechanical skill in heroes is not a big part of the game. It's important, but decision-making really sets players apart. I do agree. I don't know. Oh, this is against me. Oh, I feel bad. I don't know of any mainstream content producers in Heroes of the Storm that actually go into detail about the structure of your average Hero League game. I feel like I do that. Maybe he's never seen my videos. I feel bad. I try to do that pretty well. I think I know. I make a particular point to explain it. I probably explain like my decision-making process in Hero League game. I think that's probably the most relevant. I probably wouldn't explain maybe a more general overview. Maybe I could incorporate that a bit more. I don't know. Lack of knowledge, therefore, drastically changes the landscape of Hero League based on average skill level. But yeah, okay. Okay, here's an example. Game with silver players has an Asmodan in it. The typical talents will be similar to this build. So... Asmodan's in the top win rates. Excuse me. What is the... Asmodan's number 4. What do you know? Cool. So this is like the Asmodan build. Oh god. Okay. Master Destruction. Laser. Merc Lord. Bane Minion. Demonic Invasion. More Laser. Demonic Smite. And Force Recruitment. Oh yeah. So that's the... I found this funny when I was reading it first. So this is the typical talent, right? He'll focus on split pushing. He'll push down structures while the rest of the team does map objectives, distracts the enemy team. His team may lose the objective, but he'll often completely neglect the loss. The objective will create a boon for his team. Players using or experienced the strategy will see no problem with it because it always works and it's frustrating to deal with. For the average silver player, it's a great strategy, and Hotslogs backs it up. He's top of the win rates in Full Drive Silver. Yeah, now imagine with Master or Diamond players who have an Asmodan in the claims. They expect that this is the only acceptable talent build. I actually disagreed with this one. I think this is actually wrong. So he's got Taste for Blood. I think Taste for Blood is shit. I think Sieging Wrath is better for Hero League significantly. Army of Hell is fine. Inferno Globe is fine. Blackpool, yeah. Hellfort to Armor is fine. I like Hedonism as well. Battleborn is fine. Bolt is okay. I actually prefer Force Recruitment myself. Like this would be my build, so I think I would personally prefer this build a little bit different, but it's pretty similar, all things considered. Excuse me. Let's say that players and masters, though, use the build used by the silver player. He tries the same strategy, but this time there are a few differences. Number one, he's being matched by a Dahaka or a Falstad who's able to keep up with his push while also being able to respond with their global when a fight breaks out on the map and they win it 5v4. Global, Aspenad doesn't have a global. And then number two, whenever he hard pushes a lane, especially later in the game, he's ganked by Falstad or Dahaka and several other members of the enemy team, and constantly makes the game a 4v5 for his team. The players in this game recognize the splitting strategy and use the appropriate measures to respond to it, making the player seem like a troll. Yeah, so even though the strategy works in silver, has no merits in masters. Like, this is so important, and this is why, in particular, on my tier list, I'm like, this is for masters or grandmasters. And this is, I definitely get criticism. I actually have specifically got criticism of Asmodan before, going, OMG, I think I have him in tier 3 right now. Yeah, I have him like tier 3. I have him rated really lowly. And people going, OMG, Asmodan tier 3, you're a noob. What the fuck? Get out. Asmodan tier 1. And it's like, well, yeah, you see, they've just obviously missed the part at the start of the video where I go, this is for Masters and Grandmasters. It's not going to apply as much to lower things. And then they're coming at it, like he says, from like a silver thing, where Asmodan is really fucking strong. No matter the Masters. Okay, so this is Asmodan filter from Masters. I believe this is like the US stats. So there's Asmodan. He's pretty low, so he's not that good in terms of win rate. Excuse me. So yeah, the main point is that a silver player would make as to why Asmodan's strong pick is he is exceptional at pushing, but there's plenty of heroes that could do that and also be good. So Chen, Dahaka, Zagara, Greymane can push as hard but be better. And yeah, players at higher level punish 5v4s much harder. And yeah, this was kind of funny as well. He said from his coaching, he's seen plenty of fights in gold that are 1-4v5 when the 4-player team shouldn't have stood a chance, but people play badly, make bad decisions, and then they lose. So yeah, I think that's really important. It's always one of the difficult things making a tier list, right? And that's why I make sure at the start of every video to go, this is for Master Grandmaster, because it is, right? And you're going to have different strategies that apply. And I get told that a lot. That's often a common criticism. I suppose the most common, when I get harsh criticism on my channel, more often than not, the biggest source of that is that the person who's getting angry is espousing a strategy that works really well at other levels of play, but it wouldn't work well at this level of play. I mean, I did a couple of, I think one of the first videos I did was like, am I a noob, which was about the P2R thing, where people were going nuts at me for not turning in coins as Zagara. And when I went and I looked at it, I said, okay, if I was playing in like a Hero League at Master level or something, it would be fucking suicide to go turn in right now. It's a really bad idea. It would work for you in your games, but in like playing against Grandmasters, you would be fucking destroyed because they know exactly what you're doing and you'd be dead, and then that's all the coins gone away. So that was kind of interesting to break it down and explain it for people. But then at the same time, I also kind of the conclusion of that was, okay, well, considering that I wasn't playing a Grandmaster Hero level game, a Hero League level game or something, it's just like I'm P2 at random people. Maybe it could have gone and turned them in earlier. I don't know. We kind of broke it down a little bit, but that sort of gives you a rough insight into that. But yeah, it's a very frequent thing of criticism. People be like, but this works really well for me. And go, well, okay. But you have to understand that there's different metas. And it's really difficult to talk about things that are viable for different metas or to have a really good understanding of different ones. Because you can. So that's what I do with my tier list. Is basically, it's just I do it just for the level of play I'm on, and then I explain the logic that it applies a little bit less for all the other ones. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the limitations of what I can do. Someone was asking us like, could you have like a gold level tier list from someone who has like amazing understanding of the game? Could they like be playing at gold level and then make a really good tier list? And I kind of said, well, actually no, I don't think so, because if you had that much of an amazing understanding of the game, I think you would climb out of gold, right? I just think that would work because I think it's really difficult to actually have a really good like silver tier list or a really good silver strategy guide, because to have that good of a grasp of the strategy, I think you would climb out of silver quite quickly. So I think it's one of those things that's quite difficult, kind of catch-22 type thing. Um, of course, there's a lot more players, silver players and master players. According to Hotslogs, it's 5.5 times. I think it's much larger than that. It's like something like 50 or 100 times more silver players than master players. Just remembering the graph that they showed at BlizzCon of the distribution of the players, I think it's much large. Actually, I think like masters, grandmasters, like the top 1%. I think there's about like 25-30% in silver, so it's about like 30 times. But as he says, Hotslogs is used by hardcore users more than casual ones, so you obviously have much more of the master and grandmaster players represented, because there's very few of them and they tend to play together all the time. Whereas you could have plenty of silver players that never show up and that never use the site. But yeah, so this was kind of interesting as well, talking about his tier list. So he said his tier list, he gets fuzzy. He says he's making a tier list for the community, while at the same time excluding a sizable portion of that community by making assertions that aren't true for all players. By default, never be able to make every player happy. Someone is bound to disagree, which is fine, in fact, healthy. And that's fundamentally the thing that I'm saying, is that you've got different metas for different tiers of play. That's just the way it is. Different heroes function very differently at different tiers of play. It's impossible to make a tier list that applies that applies to everyone. You just can't do it. So that's why I explained that at the start of mine. I don't know. And like I don't have the personal experience to draw on to make a tier list specifically for the other tiers. And like I said, when I look at like the win percentages, I don't base it off of that. I base it off understanding why these heroes are doing well, or what are like kind of flukes or stuff like that. And then obviously I do reevaluate things constantly and reevaluate heroes when they've got a very high win percentage. For example, Rainer's doing really well at the moment. He's gone up 7%. So I would look into that and say, okay, is this just kind of a fluke based on a small number of games, or is there something that has changed in the meta that makes Rainer much more powerful, much more viable? Do I need to move him up my tier list next time? That's the sort of thing that I'll do. But it comes from like a pretty deep understanding of the game. So like I couldn't then just switch over to like silver and go like, okay, let's just rate them by win percentage, because I don't understand fully what actually makes heroes good at silver. I've got a pretty good idea, but I don't have a perfect idea. And also it's a fucking lot of work to make a tier list for every single rank, and I'm not really bothered. Basically. But yeah, basically you can't make everyone happy, and it is one of the things, that Master Grandmaster is the smallest portion of the community. So tier list does exclude a lot of people, but like I said, I think it ties into the rest of the videos I make. So I think it gives you a good grounding for understanding those. I think it also gives you really good understanding for how heroes perform when people play really well. And then I think the breakdowns I give for the heroes is pretty good too. But I don't know. That's why I was hesitant to make tier lists at the start, because there are so many drawbacks to doing the tier list. It's so difficult. I try to address it as best I can, because people enjoy the tier list and they find them very helpful. So it does give you an insight into how stuff ought to be played, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of drawbacks for sure. He's saying that this is the most accurate one he can make. Yeah, there you go. It's essentially, so for him, his tier list is essentially the list of heroes he would play in Hero League if he played every hero at the exact same skill level. Yeah, I don't actually quite do it like that. I tend to incorporate skill a certain amount into the tier list. Or at least I try to explain it when we get there. For example, the Alarak, I think, was a good example where I said, okay, look, he's up here, but he's a massively skill-dependent hero, so I'm going to put him there. I think with Medivh as well, I'm kind of going, I'll leave him in tier 2, because I think it's, again, exceptionally dependent on skill. With a really good Medivh, picks him in the right situation, he can be tier 1. I think he's fantastic, but you get a lot of people that don't know how to pick Medivh, like when to pick Medivh, how to play him, and then he becomes really crappy. So I think that's very important. There was a really interesting link he had somewhere. Where is it? It's like different colors, and I'm getting tired now because we've been talking for a long time with this blindingly white screen, and it's kind of dark in here. Oh, god dang it. But yeah, oh yeah, so this is important as well. Like choosing the highest tier hero is not always the right choice. I do agree with that. It's to fit with the map, to fit with the sort of composition and stuff like that. And this is also important as well. He's saying that like he's not a very good Alarak player, and he wouldn't pick him because of that. I said the same thing. But he's saying if he was good, he'd pick him generally in the order that he's listed on the tier list. And yeah, again, that's exactly what I was saying. If he played supports, Malfurion would be his go-to. Again, for me, like I said, like I think I've Malfurion still. Yeah, I've Malfurion as number 1. But for me personally, I don't like playing Malfurion, so I don't pick Malfurion. I tend to just ban him away because I don't want to play him. I don't want to play with him or against him. I just want him gone. I don't like the hero, so I just ban him away, and because he's like the best, I think, support. That makes sense. But yeah. Anyway. Yeah, we said when Malfurion and Zarya were top tier, absolute top tier, he didn't play either of them because he didn't, or he disliked them. And I think that's important as well. And I see that's actually where a lot of people go wrong in Hero League. But pick, like I had some motherfucker in one of my devotion games, pick Vala because Vala is really good. And fucking played 7 games on Vala in his life. He was awful. He was fucking awful. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? Please don't. Please don't. Play something you're good at, not something that you think is good. Because if you... It's one of those difficult things. I think to be a Grandmaster, you have to play the meta and be very good at it as well. For Master, I think it's a little bit more flexible. But certainly, you should be able to play heroes that are in the meta at least decently well. And then you want to play heroes that you're good at. You don't need to play all the heroes. Well, no one plays every hero that's good in the meta right now really well. I don't play all the heroes really well. But you should have at least a few that you can pick to cover most roles if you're looking to actually be high ranked and do that. And you're just fucking yourself and your team if you choose something that you're shit at because you think it's good. Oh, it drives me nuts, man. It drives me nuts. But you do that. You see that all the time. People playing heroes that they've like a 38, 30, 40%, 20% sometimes win rate on. And you go... You know, at what point, how low does your win rate on this hero have to go before you realize that you're actually crap at them? Stop playing them. Don't. I know they're good, but you are not good on them. Do something else, please. Rant over. I'll get angry. So, yada, yada, yada. So, he's talking about why Pika are the best, yada, yada. Vala works well in any team comp. That's what I thought. That's why it was hard to pick a specific one. Obvious comps, she performs better than the others. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, fine. But yeah, she fits in nearly everywhere. That's why I think she's quite good. That's also something I work into the tier list as well, is general applicability, or at least the general flexibility of a hero such that you can't fuck them up in the draft. I find that difficult. For example, I have the Butcher rated up high, but again, something I said is that people will fuck him up in the draft and they'll draft him wrong. But when he's drafted right, I think he can be really good. You got a hero like Vala or Gul'dan who are just... They're a bit more draft independent, or Falstad. They work really well in most compositions. They work really well on most maps. Not all maps, like Gul'dan, not all maps. But like Vala works in nearly like every composition. She works on nearly every map. If you pick Vala as your range damage dealer, it's hard to go wrong. Same with Li Ming. It's really fucking hard to go wrong. Whereas people, you can fuck up Illidan, something fierce. So yeah, so I'm getting tired. I'm swearing a lot more. But yeah, I do incorporate that. That was actually one of the challenges to first doing the tier list was how much do I, number 1, incorporate skill in terms of actually playing the hero, and number 2, how much do I incorporate skill in terms of drafting the hero. Even though it is for Master Grandmaster, there's still huge divergence. There's still a huge array of how good people are in both of those regards. So it's given that this is supposed to be like a general tier list for like your average player, how much of those do you incorporate into the average player? And for that, I mostly draw on my experience, actually, for doing that. And then, like, a bit of common sense, like, thought just applied to how the hero is and how complex they ought to be in both respects. And then between the two of those, that's how I kind of judge them based on the tier list. But I do have to incorporate that a little bit, because otherwise the tier list would be quite misleading, I think. So he's received criticism. I cannot play certain heroes well enough to assess them. I actually have never got anything like that, which is nice. Certainly it would be a true criticism in some respects, but I personally don't feel like that would impact me overly much. I think you're quite capable of judging how well a hero performs from looking at statistics, from watching other people play them that are good. It can make it a bit more difficult to explain why they're strong, but I don't feel like that's ever held me back anyway. So I don't know. I've never been criticized on that anyway. I'm sure I will be now I mentioned it, but never been criticized by that. Where was the other thingy that he had? He had another thing that was actually really, like, statistics that was really worth seeing on. It's not that. Very difficult to read this. Was it further up? I don't remember. I don't even remember what the point was, which is making it difficult to find. Okay. Well, anyway, let's just power on anyway, I guess. And we'll find maybe... Which the entire post this far has conveniently avoided discussing the main point. Hotslogs can be misleading. There's a reason for that. Okay, yeah, fair enough. It provides meta stats generated by the player base. A player base that generally lacks basic knowledge in playing Heroes of the Storm. It's not the problem isn't with Hotslogs, it's with the players and the form in which players get the data. So Hotslog shows the end result, doesn't tell you why or how a conclusion was reached. All you see is that Gazos won the highest win rates in Masters. It doesn't explain the reason, because these Gazos are one tricks. Yeah, I mean, it's always, that's one of the difficult things. Again, I've already touched on this, right, is that I try to break down and understand. For example, with Rexar, I actually find it somewhat difficult. I'm not sure entirely why Rexar's win rate is that high. I find that hard. Other heroes I can understand pretty well. You can see, for example, Gaslight is doing pretty well at the moment. Now, some of the things you can do, of course, and this should be actually very helpful, is you can, for example, let's filter by master. You can, for example, instead of just looking at this, you could see, okay, certain talents are performing very well. You can also see matchups, heroes they perform well against. So Gaslight is doing really well against Vala. That's interesting. Doesn't necessarily mean a lot, though. It depends. You're going to have to break it down over time and work stuff out, and that's what you can do. That he pairs well with certain heroes. You can see this is probably the most useful thing, wins by certain maps. For example, he seems to be quite good at Braxis, but he seems crap at Battlefield, okay, or crap at Sky Temple. He's doing pretty well in Braxis over a lot of games, so that's pretty good insight. Pretty good in some other maps over a few, but not a ton. And yeah, stuff like that. So, you know, there's a few ways you can filter this a bit more to get a bit more info. But yeah, still, you don't fully get the insight into why or how, and that just comes from game experience. I try my best to explain that and to cover that in my videos. Doesn't mean I'm always right. I think for the most part, I give a pretty good insight, but not always. So yeah, I know I judge my best as I can. I give that to you guys, and then you have to judge the best that you can. When Lily was popular, for example, there wasn't an asterisk stating Lily is good because Jugs isn't interrupted and her skill floor is very low. Yeah, so that was important. Like, Lily got huge. She was like top win rate of the game at one stage, and everyone's like, why is that? And just the reason was that she's just really easy. Right, she's just really fucking easy to play, and everyone used to say, this was the thing, they'd always used to say, oh, Lily's crap because Jug of 1,000 Cups just gets interrupted. You know, that's actually a very common thing. That's another very common flaw. I could talk a whole video about that. But people often give reasonings, or they give justifications for things that they say, without having it actually like backed up. For example, the Lily thing was, oh well, you just interrupt Jug of 1,000 Cups, and they have to sit and go, wait, no, wait, hang on. How easy is it to actually interrupt Jug of 1,000 Cups? It's not fucking easy to interrupt it. I was criticized for that actually in one video, playing Vala, and they were like, oh, why didn't you pick Reign of Vengeance and just interrupt Lily, you noob? And I go, because you're not gonna fucking interrupt Lily. Like, at this level of play, you're not fucking interrupting Lily with Reign of Vengeance when she's doing Jug of 1,000 Cups. It's not gonna happen, because she's fucking running in circles. It's a pretty short range spell with a wind up. If you try to interrupt her with that, you're probably just gonna get yourself killed, and you're gonna be fucked. But yeah, that was the thing. Lily, it was just a common thing. Oh, she just gets countered because you interrupt Jugs. And then, of course, people realize, actually, hang on, most heroes can't interrupt Jugs. It's actually really hard to interrupt, and yada, yada, yada. Now, I don't think Lily is that good at the moment. I think she's okay. I think her healing is slow and sustained, and that makes it very vulnerable to burst. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that Lily doesn't have a lot of tools for saving people that are actually in trouble. I think that's why she's not a particularly good solo healer. She doesn't have a global like Brightwing. She doesn't have the burst healing and burst protection like Oriel. She doesn't have as much sustain or the lockdown with the roots and fucking the AoE silence and crazy damage that Malfurion has. I think she's lacking a bit more than other stuff. I think she's still decent. I think she's really good as a counterpick to like Illidan as a second support. I think she's really good as a second support. But yeah, I mean, that sort of understanding that comes from more game knowledge, I guess, or that at least conception of game understanding. And this reminds me of one of the tanks. Yes, this one. Okay, this is like one of the final things. Oh, there's fucking answers here. Fuck. Okay, hang on. We're going to check out the actual answers and we'll see if it's right on them. Or at least if we agree or disagree on stuff. But this one was cool, right? So this is very important. The biggest reason matchmaking has been so difficult for Blizzard to get right isn't because there aren't enough talented individuals working on it. It's because the problem lies with the players themselves. Take a look at this screenshot. This is filtered by Masters for Hero League and shows heroes with the lowest win rate. Notice a pattern? Even in Masters, which encompasses the highest rated players in the game, a huge majority of the lowest win rate heroes are those with the highest skill ceilings. Zeratul, Medivh, Abathur, Falsehead, Alarak, Vala, and Greymane are all popular picks and competitive, yet they have amongst the lowest win rates in the game. I think that's huge, right? Again, I mentioned this with Alarak already. Why is Alarak's win rate so low? Because you need to be really good at Alarak to make it work. If you're really good, he's like the best hero in the game. But as you see, a lot of people play him and they fucking suck and they fucking lose games because they're crap, right? Bear in mind, 49.9% sounds pretty good, but for Masters, it's pretty bad. Same thing like Medivh, right? I think Medivh is really good. And like that's his win rate gone up 6%, right? I think Medivh is really good, but people are crap at Medivh. They don't know how to draft him, they don't know how to play him, and they do badly. Same thing with Abathur. People are bad at drafting, bad at playing. Those heroes are pretty good, but yeah, and it makes it difficult. That's always difficult for me then to work into a tier list, right? It's difficult. Greymane, same thing. Vala, same thing. Falstad, all the ones he was saying. Zeratul. For example, I think Zeratul should be really strong at the moment, but clearly a lot of people just aren't that good at him. If you ever play against a Grandmaster playing on Zeratul, though, that's good at Zeratul, yeah, it's pretty fucking scary. But yeah, I mean, that always makes it difficult to work into a tier list, especially because they're adding more and more. Like, you know, Alarak and Medivh, they're new heroes. With them getting worked into the tier lists, with them getting worked in the game, these high skill heroes, it becomes more difficult to do the tier list because you have to say, okay, they're a very high skill cap hero, but even again, I'm doing this for Masters and Grandmasters, and realistically, Masters and Grandmasters are just bad at these heroes. Most of them are, but then you also have to do with the ideal. That's a difficult thing that I deal with doing tier lists. I just thought that was kind of cool though to point out that even at master level play, so many of these difficult heroes, Chromie, same thing. So many difficult heroes do really badly because people, even though they're masters, just aren't that good, right? I think that's really interesting. And there you go. So yeah, Hotslogs stats can be misleading for sure. I like his post. Those are really good posts. Let's check out the answers. Okay, Battlefield of Eternity. Solo top, 4 bot, no rotation, less ganking, wave clear, not important. Yes, single target for Immortal Race. Yep, cool. Blackheart's Bay, solo bot, yeah. 4 rotate mid top, wave clear important for mid top. Need 1 or more heroes to solo merc camps. Okay, so he didn't mention like the Zool thing, like having 1 person mid top. He's gonna have 4 rotating. I think that's okay. I think ideally you want the Zool, and then you can have the 3 kind of free to do so. And then yeah, like I said, you want 1 person to solo merc camps. Alternatively, if you've got 1 person who can do the mid top by themselves, then you can have like 2 heroes do the merc camps that aren't necessarily good on their own but work well together. Braxis holdout, solo top, 4 bot, no rotation, less ganking. Yeah, wave clear, tiny significance. Globals are very strong. I think again, I think wave clear is more important because you need some decent wave clear like Gul'dan or something is very good at dealing with Zerg swarms. But yeah, Cursed Hollow, split 3-1-1 or 1-1 and have duo ganking. Okay, that's so I said the 1-1-1 duo ganking. No rotation, less duo ganks, sure. Wave clear, not important. Globals are very strong. Yeah. Dragonshire, solo top. Okay, so solo top. 4 rotate mid bot. Yeah. Wave clear, very important. Globals are strong. Cool. I think I forgot that when I was doing it. Garden of Terror, split 3-1-1 or 1-1-1, have duo ganking. No rotation, less duo ganks. Global and hero set. So again, very frequently, like my take on this, I see this a lot on multiple one of these. It's like I'm having like 1-1-1 and then having like a duo roaming, or even sometimes like you don't even always have to have one. You can sometimes even just time it well so that you can leave a lane for a while and then go back and not miss anything, so you can have multiple people roaming. Or you can even sacrifice like waves and shit. That's what I mean about strict rules. Sometimes you just want to fucking leave a lane and go gank on something because it might be just set up that it's gonna work out more in your advantage. You don't always need to be soaking. Generally, yes, but not always, right? So Garden of Terror splits up, duo ganking, no rotation is duo ganks. Global and heroes that can solo mercs are very strong. Okay, so he does value globals more than I did. I must bear that in mind. Interesting. Because I said that they weren't as important on that map, but he disagrees, so must pay more attention to that in future myself. Infernal Shrine, solo top, yeah, okay. Rotate mid bot, wave clear important. So I don't think I knew which one is the solo lane there. Globals are good. No, I think I did say that, but I wasn't sure instantly. Globals are good, requires at least 1 hero to do shrines effectively, yeah. Sky Temple, split thingy. Try to rotate, secure vision, especially for the first temple. Wave clear is okay. Globals are extremely strong, yeah. Bot solo for Tomb of Spider Queen. Rotate mid top. Yeah, so that makes sense to me now. I think I did say that, but the reason is that it's easy to, with the way the vision and the routes between the vision things are set up, it's easier to get mid top than it is to get from mid to bottom. Wave clear extremely important. Heroes that win lanes and delay turn-ins are strong, yeah. Terrors of Doom, so yeah, again, sort of 1-1 duo ganking or 3 in 1 lane. Have top solo and rotate mid bot. Okay, so I was kind of saying that, but he's got more options. Wave clear, not too important. Global and solo merc heroes are strong, yeah. Warhead Junction, okay, I didn't know this one. Split 3, yeah, same thing. Okay, wave clear's okay. Globals are OP. Yes, I just fuck it globals and then standard. Interesting. Number 2. What was question number 2? My eyes. Tomb of Spider Queen. How should you split your heroes for first turn in? And what should you expect a game in terms of structure? So I like a late game turn in. Okay, cool. This was the one I was critical of. So at 3-1-1, have your Tri-Man match the majority of their heroes to prevent efficient clear of web weavers. Is he talking about, oh, once you've got the turn in? I didn't pick that up. First turn in yields towers in each lane if the enemy team defends adequately. Okay. Death by defenders mean a lost fort. 15-minute turn in almost always destroys a fort, or always destroys a fort. Can destroy a keep if sieged well. Anything later in the game should always net at least one keep. Alright, cool. Number 3. Again, I think that's a little bit too clean cut, but I suppose like as a clean cut baseline, that's probably a good thing to have. When should you take out Merc camps? Let's use Sky Temple as our example. Immediately after the first camp phase, take out your Ogre camp. Yep, so that's the siege camp, push it in bot. Then take your Knight camp just as the next temple phase begins. So Knight camp push the top while you fight bot. Yeah, very important, and very important on many maps with, like, again, like I said, set places to fight. Number 4. Bum, bum, bum. What is an extremely standard Vala comp on Tomb of the Spider Queen? Ah. Oh, he's got fucking specific stuff. Vala, Oriel, Tassadar, etc. Thrall. That's like so fucking specific, right? Hey, okay, so I have Tassadar though. So yeah, again, I think Tassadar, that's why I picked Tassadar, or the reason we picked Tassadar both probably, is I think Tassadar really good on the map. The vision Tassadar provides, very useful. He brings vision, wave clear, and then he supports. It's his second support, right? So wave clear, super important on that map, so it's great. The vision thing is really useful. And then second support for Vala is really nice. So I said like a double warrior or double support comps. He's gone for like a singles, double support, and then ETC, a Thrall. Again, I mean, like shit, like ETC is often going to be banned away or something like that, or picked away, or same with Vala. So yeah, or Thrall, I don't know. But yeah, fairly standard. That's one example of a good comp, I think. I mean, if people had different answers, I don't think they're necessarily wrong. I think you need to be pretty vague in terms of things. But as a one example of a very standard Vala comp, that looks pretty pretty good to me. Thrall brings some burst damage, ETC brings control, Tassadar, like, nice wave clear. And then you got like burst healing, you got the sustained shields. The shields work well with Thrall and Vala and ETC. So yeah, everything works well there. It's a nice composition for sure. Number 5, on Battlefield of Eternity, so we got the one comp which is shitty, and then the at Immortals but needs kills. The second comp is good at Immortals but can be killed pretty easily, I think. Team 2 is insane race potential, should always look to burn. Yeah, okay. Team 1 only has Greymane to kill Immortal. They got Falstad as well, but he's not that great, even with ETC empowering. So they want, okay, he wants them to defend as 4 while Greymane kills Team 2's Immortal. I think it's dangerous because the Team 2 also has pretty good pick potential with, like, yeah, that's, I think it's pretty risky. Team 2 wins if they kill the defending Team 1, yeah, which is very possible, or force them off the Immortals so they can get a clean burn. Team 1 wins if they can defend successfully 4v5 with the help of their own Immortal stunning, while Greymane kills the enemy Immortals. Yeah, so like a kind of a 4-1 split. I think it's really risky. I mean, if you look at the things, right? So they've got, that's why they got Murden, ETC, Malfurion, it's pretty safe, and Falstad. They've got those to try to defend against Arthas, Tyrande, Vala, Leeming, and Alarak. Yeah, maybe it could work, actually, with Immortal. But there is, like, a very scary possibility that they just get exploded by, like, a Leeming, Alarak, Tyrande, Vala. Like, boom, you get hit by, it could be very easy for, even, like, even Murden could be wiped out by that team so quickly. Malfurion's not going to save him. Maybe with Cleanse. But then again, are Malfurions good enough to cleanse, even at master level? Ooh, I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. This has been really fucking long. 1 hour, 22 minutes. This is like the longest video ever. Thanks for watching, though. I'm wrecked. I'm going to have a nap. I'll see you all next time. Thumbs it up if you liked it. Bye-bye.